Oh, I saw one on here that I was like, this.
Is a really hard one.
Yeah, it was like, it was in like another language, and it was all backwards, and it was a hard question, even when I was able to decipher it. Hey everybody, it's Dan Souza here, actually in the test kitchen, and I'm here with.
I'm Keith Dresser, and we are here today to answer all of your burning culinary questions and any other questions that you can throw in there.
Anything. That's right. You're watching another edition of Ask ATK with Dan Souza, Keith Dresser. We're ready to do this. Keith, do you want to start things off and give me like a really easy one? Because it's been it's been like 8 months since we've done this.
You want a
so
softball question?
I need a softball to get me into it.
Okay, so this is from Gwen SB, and using veggies instead of pasta, how do I get the starch when I make my pasta sauce?
Okay, so we're doing a veggie for pasta sub here.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is just cook a pot of pasta on the side. Just make pasta, and then just throw the pasta out, and then use that pasta water right into your veggies, your veggie pasta, and you're good to go. Or feed it to the dog. No, so I actually think there's a really easy way around this. So if you're making I'm guessing you're making like spiralized veggies, which can have a really nice texture. I really like zucchini spiralized. It can have a nice kind of tender but kind of pasta-like texture too, I guess that way. I think you could do a really nice job with a cornstarch slurry. So you don't need a lot. I would start really small. Like I would start with maybe a couple teaspoons of cornstarch and maybe twice that amount of water, so 4 teaspoons of water. Mix that around, and then you could add that in. It would give you a lot of body, a lot of cling, and help kind of emulsify whatever sauce you're working with. So I think that could work pretty well. If you're not opposed to gluten, like having gluten in there, I would say that you could also, if you had semolina flour, then you could actually like cook semolina in some water, and you get something that really would be super close to pasta water. But that might not line up with, if you're doing it for gluten-free reasons.
Do you think you would have to cook that liquid in the microwave, like to gelatinize those starches? Or do you think you could just add the slurry right to the pasta water or sauce?
I would probably add it right to the sauce. So I'd cook
Okay.
the veggies however you're going to be doing it, because you may not even cook those veggies in water, right? Like you may do the whole thing as
True.
kind of a saute, and
Yeah.
then I would say get all your stuff in there, and then I would just pitch a little bit of slurry in and let that kind of bind up as much as you want it to. You can make it stronger or weaker, or you could use a smaller amount, start really small, and kind of go up from there. I don't think you need a lot, and I think you'd get some good body and some good cling to it.
Sure. Good one.
Nice. That was a good one. I wouldn't say it was the most softball question, but it wasn't full on World Series baseball, right?
Well, it was fast pitch softball, so.
It was fast pitch softball. All right, you've already gone over my knowledge base of softball. So, oh, this sounds great because this just sounds delicious. So this is from Annie. I hope I got that name right. I think her name's Annie. All right, so this one is at-home iced chai tea latte, which is a wonderful drink, but I think a lot of people do get them out. They don't make them at home. So do you guys do drinks? And Annie says that mine come out awful and grainy, which sounds terrible.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. So,
She needs your help.
yeah, so we do drinks. We don't do them that often, but we do them, and we actually have a great chai masala concentrate. And I think the key there is to use whole spices and crush them. That way you don't have kind of dusty ground spices that are not going to get trapped by a fine mesh strainer when you strain it off. So I think we're starting with like whole cinnamon, cardamom cloves, star anise, and we toast those out in the pan to bring out those oils, bring out the flavor, and then you're adding water and tea, and you're going to let that steep for a while, for like 10 minutes. And then after that's steeped, you pour it off through a fine mesh strainer, and then you have this super concentrated tea spice mixture. And hopefully, because those spices are large and they haven't passed through that fine mesh strainer, they won't be grainy. And then you can keep that in your fridge, and then you can make a hot chai masala, you can make a cold chai masala, you can put frothed milk in there, you can pretty much do what you want to do. So, yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah. You had that at the ready, so I feel like that was definitely a softball question for you.
How about, this is from Ravi Guha. What temperature and for how long do I slow roast a pork shoulder to get it tender?
Oh man. Again, if we had the magic of video and it was like bing, and then we're like
Snap.
each eating a huge, yeah, snapping a huge pork, slow roasted pork shoulder, I would also like that. So I'm gonna go back to a Brian Roof recipe for this. Brian Roof, maybe we can throw a little graphic on the screen of Brian Roof, executive food editor at Cook's Country. When he was on Cooks Illustrated, did an awesome recipe for a slow roasted pork shoulder, and I like the recipe so much I have it in my head. So it's 325 degrees for 5 to 6 hours, which sounds like a really long time, and that's for a bone-in pork shoulder, probably in the 5 to 7 pound range. And it sounds like a long time, but it's a huge hunk of meat, and you're really trying to get it so that the large majority of the meat is 195 degrees. And at that point, you have something that's really nice. It's not quite pulled pork texture. It's not gonna really fall apart, but you can pull the bone right out, and then you can get these gorgeous slices off of it. During that time, because 325 degrees isn't that low, you also get amazing browning all over this thing. We leave the fat cap on, and I think we cross-hatch it, but we season it up with salt and brown sugar to let it cure ahead of time, and then roast it 325, 5 to 6 hours. And it's just like candy crunch, fat on top, super nice, kind of salty sweet, and the meat is super tender at that point. So you can go lower on oven temperature. You can go down to 300, 250. Just realize that that time is just gonna keep going up and up, because your end goal is to get into that kind of sweet spot around 190, 195 to make it nice and tender. But that's one of my favorite recipes. This one I actually think is really cool. And so, you know, obviously this year is really different, and people's holidays are looking really different. And I think folks are trying to figure out ways to feel connected. And this is a question really hints at that with, this comes from Megan Balka, and she's asking, how do I send baked goods through the mail? We'll be apart from family this holiday, and a little sad face, which I think a lot of people are experiencing. So yeah. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious too. I've never done much of that. So how do we do it well?
So it's a great question. So I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. I mean, first of all, you probably want to be sending something that is relatively sturdy. You know, you don't want to send like thin almond Florentines or something that's going to crumble at the kind of lightest poke. So yeah, you know, sturdy things, you know, brownies, ginger snaps, those have a tendency to travel really well. If you're sending things that have different textures, like a moist cookie and a crisp cookie, you want to make sure that they're totally separate so they don't sog each other out, or, you know, the crisp ones become wet or the moist ones become dry. And wrap them really well, you know, to keep them separate. I know that we like to wrap cookies in parchment before you wrap them in plastic. So if you've baked the cookies on parchment, save that parchment, wrap the cookies up, and then wrap it in plastic wrap. And then the other one, which I really love, this tip from us, is to use popcorn. You know, the idea is that you want to give the cookies as much shock absorption as you can. So if you have a large box, you can kind of make some popcorn, or you can use styrofoam peanuts, either one, but popcorn seems to be a little bit more organic. But pack that in there, pour the popcorn around it to make sure you have a nice distance around those packages of cookies. So, and then I think you have to maybe label the box that it's fragile, and maybe the postman will actually heed that warning if he doesn't steal the cookies first.
Right. Yeah, don't write cookies, write fragile.
Yeah, don't write cookies on it.
Not cookies. I love that popcorn idea. That's awesome. I mean,
yeah,
yeah. You do run the risk of them eating the popcorn, which.
Well, maybe if you make it fresh.
Okay,
yeah, you know, put some salt on it. If they're going to eat it, then it'll taste good.
The way that I make popcorn, like the amount of butter that I use on it, which most people think is just it's completely disgusting. You know, you remember that Simpsons episode where Homer was on, like, I think it was like the window diet, where it was like he would take something, and if he rubbed it on like a piece of like paper bag and you could see through it, then that much fat soaked through it that like he could eat it.
Yeah.
I think that's what would happen with my box. Like I would be like buttered popcorn, and then it would come through and it would look like either a leopard spotted, or the entire thing would just be like grease.
Yeah, the corners would be all like greasy and like dripping, and like the cardboard would be falling apart.
Yeah, and my family would be like, oh, cool, thanks, we're so happy to have you in our, thanks for thinking of us this year. But I guess it's better than a fruitcake, right? I mean, you didn't even go there, which I think is probably smart.
No, I guess you could use the fruit cake for, shock absorption, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And then like you just go through all the fruitcake and inside there's like 4 nice cookies.
Cookies there.
Cookies are the best.
Okay, I have a good one for you.
All right.
So this is from Maximus Swan. That's a great name. How do you cook a steak in a basic apartment with nothing more than a microwave vent?
Ooh, that's a good one. And you're asking the right person because I actually live in a basic apartment with just a microwave vent. And so anytime I want to cook a steak, I'm running into this. So I was of two, I used to be of one mind where I was like, screw it, I'm going to open windows and I'm going to smoke it out. And it's kind of an open floor plan. So like we're all going to eat in like smoky steak air and it just is what it is. But we're going to have a great steak. And but I think last year, Andrew Janjigian on Cooks Illustrated came up with this fantastic way to basically slow sear a steak.
Yeah.
And it's a total game changer, and I use it all the time now. And it really requires very little prep because you actually go into a cold pan with the steak. So it works great for strip steaks and ribeyes. I like it best with ribeyes because they release a good amount of fat as they're cooking. But you're starting to dry, room temperature pan. I like to use a carbon steel skillet, but a non-stick skillet actually works well here, which is crazy because we're cooking steak. But you start room temperature everything, you throw it in there, and turn the heat to high, and then you're cooking and flipping. And you keep the heat, you drop it down if you see any smoke really, and if it doesn't sizzle any longer, it needs to be turned up a little bit more. So you're always driving off water, but you're basically, instead of getting like awesome searing immediately on that one side and then flipping it over, you're gradually building up that browning. And so you're flipping and flipping, you get more even cooking because of that flipping, and you get gorgeous even browning by the time you're done. And so it's not as perfect as the kind of reverse sear method that we love. That's fantastic, but it is very close to it, and the amount of mess is so minimal. And there's very little splatter because you're not adding a lot of oil to the skillet either. So that would be my recommendation, is to try that. So I think this is a really fun one. This is from Esteban Sega, and Esteban is asking, help me understand how vinegar kind of plays with food and when to use it. So I think just maybe some guidelines around using vinegar in cooking.
Wow, that's a pretty big subject. I mean, you can help me out here. So yeah, I mean, I think vinegar is a balance to other flavors in a dish. So you want to balance acid with sweetness. You want to balance acid or vinegar with fatty dishes. So I think it's all a matter of balancing things out in a dish. You don't want to put so much vinegar in a dish that that's all you can taste. It's not a very pleasant thing, unless maybe it's like salt and vinegar potato chips, and that's really what you're going for. But
what are some of your favorite vinegars, or when you turn to one or the other?
So I think that probably the vinegar that I like the most is sherry vinegar. So it has a nice acidity. It's not super sharp like a white distilled vinegar or a cider vinegar, but there's a lot of complexity underneath there. You kind of have some woody flavors, some kind of caramel notes, and really I find really, since I've worked in restaurants, vinegar is a nice addition to finish a dish, and we do that often with a lot of our recipes. Recipes that use just like red wine, we'll finish with a little red wine vinegar. So I think a lot of chefs out there you'll see in our recipes included will use vinegar as like salt. It's a flavor enhancer to go towards the end. So do you have anything to add to that? I'm sure you probably do.
No, I think that's great. I love the variety of them, right? Because like you talk about citrus, like you're really just using lemon and lime, and they're amazing.
That's right.
But like you have such a range of vinegars. I love sherry as well. I was going to say that cooking with vinegar is there's some complexity going on there where when you cook it, you drive off some of the acidic component to it, so it actually gets less acidic over time. So that's why you kind of reduce vinegar down, for making a gastrique or something like that, for making a sauce. Like it actually gets mellower, so it's kind of an interesting thing to kind of keep in mind when you're working with it. And I think same thing if you're adding it to a dish and it's a long cooked dish. adding it early, you'll drive off more of that acidity, so you might need some more at the end to kind of bolster that if it's supposed to be a pretty bright acidic dish.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But I'm with
So
you. I
as-
think sherry vinegar is so special.
Yeah, so Steve Dunn, who is a test cook, our associate editor on Cooks Illustrated, just developed a recipe for chicken in a vinegar sauce, which was a French dish that is very, very popular. And I think he was using, a half a cup or a third of a cup of red wine vinegar. But since it's cooked right from the beginning with the chicken, it really mellows out, and you have this great sauce that's not overly acidic. But again, we do finish that with a little bit of raw vinegar right at the end.
Just kind of bring that back up. Do you make your own vinegar? Are you one of those
You know
people?
what? I've never tried to make vinegar. I mean, I've seen it made here, and I've tried vinegars that have been made in the test kitchen, but I've never made it at home. What about you? Do you have a mother at home that you culture all your vinegars?
I
with?
don't live with my mom anymore, Keith. You know that. I told you that. Stop spreading that. No, so I've accidentally made vinegar a number of times throughout my life, but I've never gotten into like having the SCOBY and moving around. I have a really good friend. His name is Ryan Jordan. He's a pro chef in New York, and he got super into it for a while. And I remember going to his apartment one time, and he just had like, I mean, they just look like little aliens, but he had them in like jars all over the place. He was vinegaring everything. So I'd like, once you like walk off that vinegar cliff, you're done. Like you're
going.
You're going deep. You're going deep.
Great.
It's a good place to go.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is kind of a softball, maybe not. It's kind of a funny question, and
Right.
one that I've always wondered about the answer. So this
all
is I am Star Skipper. He asks, why do hot dogs come in packs of 6 and buns come in packs of 8? And he has a little one of these emojis. He's kind of one of these questioning emojis. So
Okay. I like your-
and any theories here?
So the the cynic side of me is like, ugh, big hot dog is just trying to get you to buy more. Wait, so how does it work out? You have more dogs, right? So they're trying to get you to buy an extra pack of buns, right?
Yes.
They just don't line up, and so that's the cynical side of me is saying like that's why they're doing it. But I recently found out that my dad is a big fan of putting 2 hot dogs in one bun.
Whoa! Whoa!
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
You just kind of blew my
only
mind.
I only recently found it out because I guess my mom was making hot dog buns because that's something she does, and she was making big ones and he was putting 2 hot dogs in it. So now I'm thinking, maybe they're just like being generous, and they're saying like, why don't you throw an extra dog in one of those buns, or split it in half and add it to an extra couple. I don't know, but it also, you also gives the option of going old school and like taking those 2 extra hot dogs, cutting them up and put them in your mac and cheese or something like that. Like go real back to like childhood kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I have a hot dog related question for you.
You do?
So
Okay.
I do. This is kind of hot dog related. So I was surfing the web and stumbled across some article that was like 50 hot dogs from each state. And I didn't realize that each state had its own particular hot dog, but they listed
either.
them all out. So do you have a favorite hot dog? It's kind of a weird question, but
Like a
maybe
favorite
people wanna know.
state hot
Yeah,
dog?
just like a Chicago hot dog, or do you just like plain hot dogs with nothing on it, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I wish I knew what the 50 different, I don't even know what, is Massachusetts with like baked beans or like a,
I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't
or
look
like
at
a whole cod just like
it. It's just
sitting on top of it.
yeah.
I wonder what it is. So I mean, I love Chicago hot dogs. I do. Like I feel like I either want Chicago hot dog with celery, salt, and everything, like sport peppers, and it's like so awesome, or I want just super simple because I feel like in a Chicago dog I'll probably get beaten up if I ever go back to Chicago, if we're ever allowed to do that. But like I feel like you lose the hot dog some there, right? There's so much else going on.
Yeah.
So, so I'm down for like a little mustard. I do ketchup, and I know I'll probably get beat up for that from just by someone else, but a little mustard ketchup on a good dog. I like a steamed dog and a steamed bun, like just everything's super soft and nice. So that's my picks. But what about you?
So, so this is kind of crazy. I grew up in Maine, and the reason why I went to this 50 hot dog, one from every state thing is I wanted to see what the Maine state hot dog was. And I thought, I totally expected is that when I grew up, we used to eat these hot dogs called red snappers. And I don't know if anybody is going to recognize that doesn't come from Maine, but
Yeah.
they had these, super vibrant red casings on them. And I've only seen them in Maine. I've never seen them anyplace else. So that when I think of a hot dog, I think of these Maine red snappers. So call
love
me
that.
crazy.
No, you're not crazy at all. No, so my mom's side is from Maine. I remember
Yeah.
those hot dogs as a kid too, and I remember being introduced to them and being like, "What is this?" 'Cause,
What
like
is
a
this?
hot dog was just this like tender whatever, and this was like it's got some snap to it.
Oh, the casing totally has snap in it, and like when you
Yeah.
boil them, like the red coloring comes off in the water, but they're just delicious, and it's so much of my childhood is eating these red snappers, and I used to actually have a cousin that would eat them cold right out of the package. So I'm assuming he's still alive, but
Wow, you guys are close, huh? You're not.
Yeah.
You're like, I think my cousins died for eating red snappers. Wait, I love that so much though. So I was expecting Maine would also have like some kind of weird seafood component to it or something
Yeah,
like that.
no,
but it's just
I
a straight up red snapper.
oh,
I
well,
love that.
that's what I thought that it should be for Maine, but
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great. I love that. I wanna have those. But I like that natural casing that snappy is. That's a good hot dog. So this is about dairy and using your freezer. So how do you
Okay.
freeze and thaw dairy products? And they mention milk, half and half, and yogurt. And it says for texture. So I'm assuming they're like, how do you preserve them? And so they come out at the right texture. So
Yeah, so-
give that one to you.
yeah, that's a good question. So I don't think, I mean, you can freeze all dairy. I mean, I think that we've done a bunch of tests in the kitchen, freezing yogurt, freezing buttermilk, freezing milk, freezing cream. So I don't think you're ever going to find it come back to the original texture that it would be coming out fresh out of the carton. I mean, it just they separate, especially with like yogurt, because of that process of making the yogurt, it will separate out. But that doesn't mean that you can't use them. You can use them in really any baking. So if you have muffins or cakes or anything like that that call for dairy, that's a great place to use up any frozen dairy. But it's you're not going to be able to freeze some half and half and then put it in your coffee. A week down the road, it's not going to look good.
Yeah. Do you think does fat content have a big thing to do with that? Like if you go with cream, like are you going to get better?
So
Better chance of it coming out okay?
I mean, I feel like cream does do a better job of freezing. In the lower fat dairies, buttermilk is typically non-fat or very low fat, fat-free. Yogurt doesn't do well. But do you freeze cream? I know some people do that.
Yeah, but not to use it fresh. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'll freeze it and it ends up in an ice cream or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. But I think you're right. It's like you can use it in baking. There's so many different options for it, and it lasts so long. I mean, you can freeze it and leave it there for a really long time.
Yeah, and you can freeze it in small amounts, so you're not like freezing a whole half gallon of the milk. Just pour it off into like half cup increments or cup increments, and then you can thaw it out and use it for baking.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been really, really fun. I'm glad you guys gave us a launch off question to just basically talk about hot dogs for most of the time, because that's what we clearly wanted to get into. Keith, thanks for doing this. This was really fun. This is the first time that we've been kind of in the same proximity, even though we're separated by like windows and a bunch of kitchen stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still our own bubbles, but yeah, it's certainly nice to get back into the test kitchen here.
That's right. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back with more of these all the time, so keep sending in your questions. And Keith and I are going to put our masks back on because it's important to remember wear your mask. And
Wear your masks.
We'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.